Hey everyone, welcome to TJ Makes. I'm TJ and I'm a robotics PhD student. And I've had a lot of both technical and informal interviews, but I've really struggled with hardware technical interviews. And as a mechanical engineer in tech, there's not a lot of resources for us out there. So I'm hoping with this video, I can kind of break down what technical interviews are, the different types, and how you can nail all of them. So make sure to like and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers by February. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so technical interviews are exactly what they sound like. They're just interviews that are technical. And they're aimed at gauging your technical prowess, your thought process, your personability, and then how you can communicate technical things over the phone or just in meetings and stuff like that. So in my experience, I've identified three main types of interview questions. So you have one, the hypothetical design situations. Two, you have asking about a technical problem in your past. And then three, the worst one, is the theory-based questions. So I'm going to be going over what all of these three mean in detail, and then I'm going to be going into how you can approach all three, and then just how to get ready for technical interviews in general. Okay, so here are some things that you should prepare for an interview. So for a more virtual or like a phone interview, you should bring a cheat sheet with notes that you can reference during the interview. You should bring your resume, and then you should bring a computer. The cheat sheet will have equations, formulas, questions, and just general topics that you should go over when you're answering the questions. It's going to help a lot reduce how much time you have to actually like memorize these topics, and then you can just have it as a reference point to look at instead of just kind of like mass memorizing all these things. And the resume is going to be useful if they ask you something about your past experience. You can just easily go onto the resume, look at it, and just reference those experiences without having to kind of memorize everything about it. But if you're in a physical interview, you should only bring copies of your resume and then also a blank sheet of paper to write notes on. Moving on, I'm going to be discussing how to utilize and prepare these items for the interview pertaining to the different types of questions you get asked. So first, we're going to start off with theoretical design problems. So theoretical design problems are when a recruiter sets up a scenario with problems and constraints, and then they ask you how you would approach that problem. So you see this type of problem a lot with design or project management focused roles. And to prepare for these kind of questions, you should do some research on the team first to figure out what kind of topics are important to them and like what things are relevant to their expertise. Most of the time, the design questions they ask you are going to be like directly relevant to the problems they face, or maybe even like a past problem they have faced before. On your cheat sheet, I recommend writing out the different topics that are relevant to that position as headers, and then write out some important formulas and topics and theories and diagrams and stuff like that. For example, stuff like the stress strain curve, or just like different terminology like toughness. What are the other terminologies? I've been out of college for a minute, so forgot. But yeah, toughness, like elasticity, stuff like that, or like gear types, general material properties, etc. I would also do some research on just common questions in general that are asked in like for that specific role. For example, if you're applying to Google for a mechanical engineering position, I guarantee you will find those questions somewhere online because thousands of people are applying and interviewing for these roles and stuff for the big companies. So I would do some research on that and maybe take some notes and study those questions, and just kind of try to understand these topics so that when they ask you a question, you don't kind of get caught off guard. You kind of have some background of how to answer the question. Some general advice to tackle these questions. I'm going to kind of go in order of how it would go if they were to ask you the question. So let's say they ask you a question, and when they create the problem for you, make sure that you are clear on all constraints in the situation. Don't be scared to ask them to repeat that scenario. As the recruiter talks, feel free to write down diagrams, write down any notes, and just really try to make sure that you're completely clear with what they're asking you and what you need to do. Then talk slowly and clearly as you try to take them through your entire design and thought process. This is your chance to show them how you think and how you would approach different problems, because to the company, this is like the main thing they're looking for. They're trying to see, how do you think and how can we use that to do whatever we do. Another reason this is important too is because like if you're going down the wrong path maybe in your question, in your answer, they can try and guide you back because they can see exactly where you went wrong, and maybe they can kind of use all the things that you did right instead of that one thing you did wrong, rather than just kind of like going off of one thing if you didn't explain your whole thought process. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on that. Most of the time, there's really no wrong way to answer these design problems. It's really just about, do you have solid reasoning behind it, and can you justify your thought process? And that's going to be like the main takeaway. Like, make sure that whatever you say, you can justify, because they will double up on anything that sounds kind of off. They will like drill you on it sometimes. So make sure you're clear and like everything you do is kind of justifiable. I do have some examples. So one question is, what are some factors you need to consider when designing a vehicle windshield? Another one would be like, how would you manage the heat of a compute unit in a robot? And then the last one would be like, how would you design a water bottle for an 8-year-old? And just start at the very beginning and be like, this is where I would start, and then just kind of take them through the entire process. All right, so that is design situations. So we're going to move on to past experiences. So questions about your past experiences are aimed at discussing kind of how you approached problems in your past. It's kind of similar to design situations, but they kind of want to see proof and evidence of how you think. Usually they ask you questions like, take me through the hardest design problem you've ever faced, or tell me about a time when you've designed something to be CNC'd. A lot of the times they'll ask you also like follow-up questions based on your answer, so like be ready for that as well. They're mainly trying to see how you handled problems in your past and how you designed around constraints, but at the same time they want to learn how deep your technical knowledge goes in areas that are relevant to their team. So the main way to approach these questions is to become really familiar with your past experiences. Get out that resume and just kind of like, for each experience, remember the main problems, the constraints, the wins, the losses, the results, all of that stuff. And this might sound like a lot, but it's worth it to go through this and remember it for yourself, because there may be things that you didn't even remember that you went through that, you know, will pop up in an interview. So make sure you get that straight before you start the interview. This is definitely something to write out on your cheat sheet. So like, let's say you did an internship at Microsoft. So write out Microsoft and then just write out the main wins, losses, constraints, problems, stuff like that. You could also just annotate your resume to be like that as well. But for me, my resume is kind of busy already. So like that kind of makes it hard to find the information I need. So I personally put it on a cheat sheet. But it's really up to you about how you want to organize it. For your cheat sheet, annotate your resume annotate like your resume items and highlight keywords in those experiences as well. So if there's, let's say at your Microsoft position, you did high volume manufacturing, I would highlight that. Or like if you did any work with CAD or SolidWorks, highlight that as well. So that when you come back to that cheat sheet in the interview, you could be like, okay, where did I do high volume manufacturing? And then you just see it highlighted right there. You could easily just kind of go straight to that. So like I said earlier in the past section, be clear and very concise with your answer. Don't ramble like I'm doing on this video. Just talk about experiences you know the best, or else you kind of might fumble a little bit. I'm very guilty of doing this, so I'm trying to help you guys, you know, learn from my past. Some examples that they could ask you is, let's say, tell me about the hardest technical challenge you've had to design around. That's one. Another one is, tell me about an experience that is closest to this internship position. Or when have you used gears in a project? Stuff like that. All right, so lastly, we're going to talk about theory-based questions. I know it's gross. It sounds gross because it is gross. And I'm not going to lie, they're the hardest ones and definitely not my strong suit. So hopefully they go better for you. These are when a recruiter asks you a question that sounds like it's straight out of a textbook. Like literally just like a straight homework question from physics 1 or something. And I've been asked like everything from mechanics of materials to chemistry stuff to physics stuff. So it like really catches you off guard if you don't refresh yourself on this material. They want to make sure that you kind of understand the main like major takeaways from your classes. So stuff like equations, theories, just general mechanical engineering fundamentals. To prepare, I would genuinely spend some time reviewing like stress strain curves, deflection, deformation, thermo vocab, and just like physics basics. Those like definitely cover, and then depending on your position, kind of branch out to see if there's anything else that you should probably review. And also, like, you could also just email the interviewer and be like, are there any things that I should like know beforehand or stuff like that? Like, you can ask them that kind of stuff and they won't feel any type of way. Yeah, just kind of get comfortable with the terminology and even do some simple practice problems. These interviews are really kind of just like oral exams, which sucks, but like you actually have to study for them if you want to do well. So just kind of keep that in mind. When you're asked a question, try to write out any major constraints on your cheat sheet. So if it's a formula question, write out that formula. If it's a beam question, draw a beam, stuff like that. And make sure to question the interviewer to be more specific if you need any clarity in the problem. Definitely refer to your cheat sheet during this whole like process. Some examples that I've gone personally is, what is toughness? What terms in a deflection formula makes the biggest difference? If you had a boat and you drop an anchor off the boat, will the water level rise, stay the same, or lower? I don't know how that's relevant, but I've gotten all of these. Hopefully that helps a little bit. I'm going to kind of move on to kind of final thoughts and conclusion. Okay, wow. So that was a lot of information. And I know this sounds like a lot of work, but you got this. If you get it right and you do well in the interview, it could change the whole course of your life. Not to be dramatic, but like one job could like lead to another job. It could lead to another job. So I would take this as seriously as possible, but also don't like let the success of the interview define your personal capability, because you are capable. You can do all of this. You could do anything that you put your mind to. So if you don't do well in the interview, it's okay. You will get another interview and you'll do well. I do have a few more tips to close out the video. I'm just kind of go through bullet by bullet. Number one, I would come up with some questions to ask the interviewer beforehand. In case you can't come up with any during the interview, I always go with around 3 questions as a baseline, depending on the time that I have left. So just kind of write that on your cheat sheet beforehand, just to reference later. Another thing I would do is practice with friends and family. They can ask you some of the questions that I propose in this video, and then you can also just kind of like try and practice like you're actually in the interview. Another one is make sure that your cheat sheet has relevant information that you can reference during a question. Like I wouldn't put anything super extraneous, just kind of like put some really short bullets on important things. Just be like, a worm gear is not back drivable. Like this is a helical gear. Put some pictures and stuff. You don't have to put a whole documentary on there. And also, I would also kind of come up with some notes about the interviewer and their background. That's sometimes helpful. You can just be like, you can kind of tailor your questions to their background, and sometimes they like that. There's this one guy like I saw that liked cars, and then I asked him about cars, and then he just kind of like perked up a little bit. So stuff like that, just kind of like keep that in mind for the interview. Last thing, just relax, stay calm. Interviewers are literally just people. They were in your exact same position X amount of years ago. You're capable of knocking it out the park. You're capable of getting the offer. If you prepare, you can do it. And remember, like it doesn't mean if you like don't get the offer, there's so many things that could have led to that decision. You could have been perfect for the position, but like they didn't have enough headcount, or like their budgeting was off. So like if you don't get a call back, I would just try and move on and not take it personally, because that's just kind of corporate America. So I hope that was helpful. I'm gonna try and put some topics that you should put on your cheat sheet in the description below, and I might also link my cheat sheet as well. It's very not pretty, so don't judge me at all, but hopefully that helps. So yeah, I'm gonna plan to make more content aimed toward hardware engineers and like mechanical engineers and tech, because that is not very apparent out there. Like everything's like CS stuff and like FANG stuff. So hopefully this will help. This perspective will help you in your journey wherever you are. And I'm also going to do some grad school stuff as well. So hopefully that helps as well. So yeah, make sure to like and subscribe. Try to get me to that 100 subs goal by the end of February. And yeah, I'll see you guys later in the next video. Peace.